Recently, I read the book 0 to 1, published in 2014 and written by Blake Masters and Palantir co-founder Peter Thiel. 0 to 1 offers up Peter Thiel's philosophy and lessons learned from his founding and selling of PayPal, investing in Facebook, and becoming a billionaire in the process. 0 to 1 essentially lifts the veil on how this man thinks, how he approaches business, and how to go about building a startup's future and shape the world in doing so. To me, as a follower of Palantir, I find looking at the writing of this book as a way to project out the potential for PLTR, given Thiel is doing and has done a great deal for the business. I'll be using Palantir as a visual example throughout this video. A link is in the description if you wish to check out the book. This is not sponsored, and I'm not going to blast you with an Audible ad. Throughout the rest of the video, I'm going to share many insights and my favorite takeaways from the book. Enjoy. Lesson 1, 0 to 1.
And I think every moment in the history of business, every moment in the history of technology happens only once. The next Mark Zuckerberg will not be building a social networking site. The next Larry Page will not be building a search engine. The next Bill Gates will not be building an operating system company. If you're copying these people, in some sense, you're not learning from them. There is no science to business. Every great company is one of a kind. And the question is, how do you get from 0 to 1? And so the starting point for my book, 0 to 1, is this sort of anti-formulaic approach. It's to take this question of singularity and uniqueness as the central question. And I try to get at it through a variety of sort of contrarian questions. What great business is nobody building? Tell me something that's true that nobody agrees with you on. These are often quite hard questions to answer because we think it's hard to come up with some new truth, or it often requires courage because you often have to go against conventional wisdom in one way or another.
Vertical leaps. Vertical progress is what it takes to go from 0 to 1 and create any technology or idea in the first place. If you want to create a startup that'll drastically change the world, you have to go from 0 to 1, not 1 to many. It's a matter of focus and discipline that will separate the successful from the failures. Lesson 2, monopolies.
If you're a founder or entrepreneur, what you want to aim for is monopoly. You want to aim to build a company that is one of a kind and that it's so far differentiated from the competition that it's not even competing. And I think this is the conventional wisdom is always that capitalism and competition are somehow synonyms. I believe they're antonyms. A capitalist is someone who's in the business of accumulating capital. A world of perfect competition is a world where all the profits are competed away. I think there are sort of two different reasons this monopoly and competition idea is not understood. One is somewhat intellectual, because the people who have monopolies don't talk about it. They pretend not to have monopolies for reasons that I will leave to your imagination. And the people who don't have monopolies pretend to have something unique about their business, because otherwise nobody would invest or give them any money.
Monopolies for society. Peter Thiel says that a monopoly means one company is doing something so much better than any others that no other entity can survive, and this is a net benefit overall for society. Create a monopoly. You create a monopoly when you solve a unique problem, when you do something other companies can't do, or when you do something so well nobody else can offer a reasonably close replacement. Quote, all happy companies are different. Each one earns a monopoly by solving a unique problem. All failed companies are the same. They failed to escape competition, end quote.
This monopoly question ends up being very, very underappreciated and we sort of underweighted as a variable intellectually. But I think there's also sort of a second reason that this is not understood that well. You know, the opening line of Anna Karenina is that all happy families are alike, all unhappy families are unhappy in their own special way. And I think the opposite is true of business. I think all happy companies are different because they figured out some way to radically differentiate themselves and escape from competition. All unhappy companies are alike because they fail to escape the essential sameness that is competition. We always think that the losers are the people who can't compete effectively enough. The losers are the people who are slow on the swim team in high school. The losers are the people whose grades or test scores aren't quite good enough to get into the right universities or something like that. And so the idea that somehow competition is something that we are perversely attracted to is very counterintuitive. And yet I want to suggest that there is always this incredible pull that competition has on us. When you compete ferociously, you will get better at that which you're competing on, but you will always narrow your focus to beating the people around you, and it often comes at this very high price of losing sight of what is more important or perhaps more valuable. The monopoly competition is not just this intellectual failure, it's also this thing where you have a tiny door where everyone's trying to rush through, and there may be around the corner a vast and a secret gate that no one's taking, and you should always find the secret path and go ahead and take that.
Definition of a monopoly. Proprietary technology, 10 times better than any existing solution. Network effect, starting hyper niche and building out from there. Economies of scale, take software as a service in modern day as an example. Excellent branding, such as Apple or any of the other big tech firms. Build a monopoly. Actively attempt to seek a hyper-niche target market that has little to no competitors. Once you have dominated the market, expand to the nearest adjacent market. Do not go after current giants. Attempt to make the last great development in a specific market and reap all the benefits of a mature ecosystem. Lesson 3. Founders. Founders with a vision. Founders need a vision for the future, which is exactly what companies need to go from, you guessed it, 0 to 1. Thiel says founders deserve even more scrutiny than the business model or product itself when analyzing a business for the first time. Ownership. Who legally owns a company's equity? Possession. Who actually runs the company on a daily basis? And control. Who formally governs the company's affairs? Leadership. Thiel uses an analogy for startup culture. You are either on the bus or off the bus. In binary terms, Thiel is able to determine who he wants as part of a company. Lesson 3. Company culture. The 4 dimensions to corporate culture. Imagery. Using branded clothing and merchandise to show others in your company that you belong. Slogans. Catchphrases and idioms are great tools to build strong relationships among members of a team. Advocacy. Advocating and broadcasting the main problem you aim to focus on tackling, which is usually the mission. Obsession. Find like-minded people. Use active employees to recruit other like-minded who are obsessed with solving the same problems. The goal is to create and foster a strong and unrivaled company culture. Lesson 5. Put it together. 7 questions for success. The engineering question. Can you create breakthrough technology instead of incremental improvements? The timing question. Is now the right time to start your particular business? The monopoly question. Are you starting with a big share from a small market? The people question. Do you have the right team? The disruption question. Do you have a way to deliver your product? The durability question. Will your market position be defensible 10 and 20 years into the future? The secret question. Have you identified a unique opportunity that others don't see?
And this is the basic dichotomy in my book. I think for us to have a successful 21st century, we're going to have both globalization and technological innovation. And I think these are 2 very different modes of progress. And people often use these words interchangeably, and I think that's always a big mistake. I draw globalization always on an x-axis. I describe it as copying things that work, going from 1 to n, horizontal or extensive growth. China is the paradigm of globalization today, and to first approximation, what China needs to do in the next 20 years is just copy everything that's working in the West. You can maybe skip a few steps, but if it executes against that, the people in China will be much better off in the decades ahead. And then I always draw technology on the y-axis, and I describe it as vertical or intensive growth, doing new things, going from 0 to 1. Today we would divide the world into the developed and developing nations. The developing nations are those that are copying the developed world. And so this developing dichotomy is a pro-globalization dichotomy. It's sort of a convergence theory of history where the entire world will become more and more homogeneous as globalization continues apace. But it is also implicitly an anti-technological dichotomy, because when we say that we're living in the developed world, we are implicitly saying that we're living in that part of the world where nothing new is going to be done, where things are finished, they're complete, and we can expect decades of stagnation and sclerosis, and the younger generation should expect to have a lower living standard than their parents, and we have sort of this rather bleak view of the future. And I think we should not accept that sort of a label. We should not accept this idea that we're living in the developed world. And so I will end by saying that I think we should always return to the very contrarian question, how can we go about developing the developed world? Thank you very much.
So I hope this video has given you some insight into what the book 0 to 1 is all about and what Peter Thiel really is thinking when he's looking at a company for the first time, what he wants the startup to be able to do and what they should be looking for, targeting, and aiming to achieve, and even taking that a step further to look at a company such as Palantir that is already public, that is already worth tens of billions in value, but still has so much farther to go in terms of its mission, target market, and world domination. So again, links in the description if you want to check it out, and I just thought this would be an interesting and fun video to produce, so I hope it was of some value to you. Until next time.